Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, where we are building a community of people who are in the midst of midlife, sharing our stories and learning from each other along the way. Each week, I'll have a guest join me to discuss a topic that impacts our lives and touches on some aspect of midlife. We'll discuss relationships, transitions, health and well-being, parenting, careers, and more. My goal is to encourage and support you and help you thrive as you navigate this adventure of midlife. Join me here each week for the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. Melissa Mulvaney, welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about being a two.
Yes. Oh, I know. You're my people. You're my people. We were talking before we started recording, and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, the twos. Yes, I am a two. So we'll try to keep this to half an hour. I'm afraid we could just talk,
We'll try.
talk and go. But before we get into all the Enneagram fun, could you just introduce yourself to the listeners, just share about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. I am a mom of three boys, soon to be grandma, to a baby girl, which is still blowing my mind that as a boy mom that I'm finally going to get a little girl to love on and spoil rotten. So super excited for this coming season in our life. Been married for 26 years. My husband and I both grew up in Pennsylvania near Philly. So go Birds. Super excited about our Super Bowl win this year.
Yes, I was cheering for the Eagles. I was.
Well,
I'm not an Eagles fan, but that's what I was going for. So
everyone but Kansas City people were cheering for the Eagles. So but yeah, 16 years ago, we got transferred to the Detroit area for a 2-year job, and we're still here. So
yeah, never left.
So yes, so we are transplants to Michigan. My kids have spent way longer here than their childhood in Pennsylvania, but we go there a lot because all of our family's there. So kind of torn in different places. But yeah, I write and I am working on launching my own podcast. So that's about me.
I love it. Well, we met over Instagram. We're Instagram
on the gram.
buddies. Yes, we did. And I just loved your content. First of all, just generally the things that you put out there, the positivity, the encouragement, the support, but also the authenticity. You've even come on a couple of times with your pep talk and said, hey, this is as much for me as it is for all of you, right?
I posted something last night I was like, I am preaching to myself, but I will share with my followers as well because they probably need it too.
Yeah. If I need it, if you need it, there's somebody else out there that's like they're needing it too. So absolutely. Well, you are an Enneagram 2, and before we get started, I'm just going to quickly go through the core motivations for a 2, even though I feel like I know them by heart because I'm a 2 as well. But for those that don't know, it's like, this is me. But the core, so the 2s are our supportive advisors. That's what we are in many ways. And our core fear is being rejected and unwanted, being thought worthless, needy, inconsequential, dispensable, or unworthy of love. That even hurts my heart just to read that.
I know. I'm like,
ouch. Core desires are being appreciated, loved, and wanted. Yes, to all of those. Our core weakness is pride, which is denying our own needs and emotions while using our strong intuition to discover and focus on the emotions and needs of others. Confidently inserting your helpful support in hopes that others will say how grateful they are for our thoughtful care. I never do that.
Right?
I don't ever insert myself in situations where I'm not maybe even needed or wanted, but hey. And then our core longing is that we are wanted and loved. And so that we are loved unconditionally, just for ourselves and not how we help and serve others. So before we kind of go deeper, though, how did you first learn about the Enneagram and what kind of interested you about it?
You know, I can't remember, like, specifically,
Mhm.
but I'm sure Instagram was a part of it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Has to be.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause I'm
There's a
trying to
lot
think
of Enneagram content out there on Instagram. Yeah. A lot
exactly.
of good,
So
great content.
absolutely, absolutely, and a lot of fun content too, which I enjoy as well. But it's been a number of years, but I can't pinpoint exactly, but it was like all of a sudden, I felt like the Enneagram, like, information was just kind of exploding. Um, and
Yeah.
so I'm sure I, had to have been on social media. But yeah, so that was kind of how I started
Um,
learning about it a little bit. And it was like, as I saw little breadcrumbs, in people's
mhm.
posts some at some point, I found Beth McCord and
Yeah.
her Enneagram information and just kind of
Mhm.
it was like, oh, I felt like I was understanding myself so much as I was reading all of this information, and so I just got
Mhm.
more interested in listening to podcasts and reading books and that type of thing, and then actually, as a staff, I work at our church,
Mhm.
um, we did Enneagram, like, testing
Yeah.
for each of us to help us learn how to better work together and communicate with each other and understand each
Oh,
other,
yeah.
so it's great to have, the a full, test with all
Mhm.
that information.
I
So
love
I just
that.
kinda quickly dove in.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love it. Yeah. No, I completely agree about social media. There are so many great accounts. I can link some in the show notes. Certainly Beth McCord, your Enneagram coach,
Mhm.
is a great one. There's just so many, and I of course follow all of them because I love
Right.
learning and as much about myself, but also the other types. Hearing how they
Right.
talk about, well, this is how a 4 is, or this is how an 8 is, or a 9. I love that
Exactly.
too because I have people in my life that are those types, and I want to know them. And I think your point about doing it in a staff setting at your church to just help understand each other and how you navigate the world a little better. I think that's so powerful, and it can really impact your teamwork, your working relationships, all of the things. So,
Absolutely. I work with 2 sixes, which I didn't realize, some
yeah.
of the other because in my family, we have 4 number in my family of 5, we have 4 numbers represented. So, of course,
Mhm.
that's where I've put all of my focus
Right.
is learning about those numbers so I can understand my people better.
Yeah.
Um, and so, there's a couple people that I work with on staff. I was like, "Oh, yes, like, I understand them more because I've learned more about that number."
Right.
But then the 6s and it was like I started reading, I was like, "Oh, yes, they are, like,
Uh,
absolutely." And so for me, like, for as them as 6s, learn like, when they are negative or worried and anxious about things and whatever, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness." I'm like, "Oh, but that's actually how they're wired."
right.
So,
Right.
okay, like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And for me, I think one of the biggest things that the Enneagram has given me is realizing that so much of how people that I'm interacting with, like what I could easily, and this is probably part of my 2ness, take on as like problems with myself.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Oh, I love the expression on your
Yes.
face.
We
You're
do
like,
that.
yes, this.
We
It's
do. We
I
take
I
on the
realize
emotions of others. Yeah, for
how
sure.
they're acting even towards me is really about them and how they operate in the world and not about me. And I can just say, okay, like the
Mhm.
coworker situation, they're anxious and worried about this and that and this detail and that detail. That's not because they don't think I'm capable. It's because that's how they're wired.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it has given me such a freedom to try to navigate what's mine,
Mhm.
what's my responsibility, what's my,
Right.
and what's just that person.
Right,
So
right. It's just how they're wired, and it also, I think too, what I've found it to do is it also gives you some compassion for people that maybe you didn't know, like,
absolutely.
"Oh, why are they acting
Yes.
this way?" Or, Is it
Right.
because of something I did?" No, it's actually not. It's just how they're wired and how they're
Right.
navigating,
And that
and, "Oh my gosh, let me help," let me help
right, exactly, exactly,
but you
yes,
know what I mean? It's you
absolutely,
understand them better, and that's whether that's in a
right,
family dynamic, a workplace, friends, whatever, it's just
right,
you just can't
yes,
even quantify how helpful that can be, so
it
I love that.
absolutely
I love that your church did that. I am planning to do some small group presentations about the Enneagram for some different teams, and I'm so excited. Just when I hear about teams doing it, you know, the assessment and then talking more and learning more about each other. It's just really exciting because I think it's so helpful for people, even teams that have worked together a long time and know each other really well,
Right.
knowing why they
Yes.
behave the way they do can really add a whole nother level of compassion, but also just like cohesiveness as a team and all of that. So I love your church did that. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I love that.
And as a mom for me, it's just been I'm always like, "Man, if only had I learned about the Enneagram
Mhm. As you're walking out of the
20 years
hospital with
ago."
your newborn. No, I'm kidding.
Right,
We don't know our
exactly,
kids' types till
exactly.
later, but like, you know, but
Right.
still, like,
It
here's your
would
book. It's good
have
stuff.
drastically changed at if only, but probably more so, but if only my experience of motherhood, I think it would have changed the dynamics in our home so much.
Mhm.
But if even just how I navigated raising, I have 3 boys. They're all 3 different Enneagram types,
Yeah.
so it would have really helped, but I'm like, well, we'll
Yeah.
just
Now we
take
know we can
what I
move
know now
on.
and move
Yep.
forward.
That's
Exactly.
right. That's right. Oh, I
Exactly.
know. I
Yeah.
feel like they should hand you the Enneagram, book as you're leaving the house. So you're going to need this in a few years. So here,
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so
whatever.
it's been
It's just,
really transformative for that, just in
yeah,
how I navigate and understand my kids and, you know, so yeah, it's been really pivotal for that as well.
I love it. I love it. I think that's great. Yeah. I have found it to be incredibly helpful in
Yeah.
parenting as well.
Yeah.
Very, very helpful. So we twos are usually, we're very relational, sometimes to the point where and I don't know if you ever had this experience, but we walk into a room and we can feel the emotions of all of the different people in the room. We can sense where people are at, what they need, how they might be feeling. We tend to be more on the empath side, where, as you mentioned earlier, we can sometimes take on the emotions of other people, and sometimes that
Yes.
is not great for us to
Right.
do. Just I'm speaking from personal experience.
I don't know what you're
Boundaries
talking
that
about.
need to
No,
be drawn.
absolutely.
And it can, it can be a blessing to be able to be that
Mhm.
compassionate, but it can also be
Right.
really difficult for us to be able to kind of draw that line in the sand and say, can't, I can't take, I've got my own stuff, I can't take
Right.
on the
Yes.
needs and emotions of everyone.
Right.
Show me how, or talk to me about how that applies or shows up for you in your life. Where do you feel like you're doing that, and have you found anything that helps you navigate that? Because it can be
Yeah.
really challenging sometimes.
Yeah. I think, for me, again, man, if I'd have learned about the Enneagram earlier, right? Um,
Yes.
but really, as
Amen.
I have grown and, worked on dealing with some of my own junk,
Mhm. Yep.
I don't feel like I struggle with that as much. Um, I think probably I'm on the cusp of my youngest son turning 20, so I'm almost done having teenagers.
Right.
And so I think a lot of that is just launching 3 kids into the world. It's given me such a different perspective of, what motherhood looks like and what that looks like,
Mm.
for me wanting to have good, strong relationships with my sons as adults, I've realized, like, I can't be all up in their business.
No.
Like, it's their li
Mhm.
I know, it's
I
their
know.
life and they need to find their way, and God's
Mhm.
been so faithful in that, but,
Mhm.
it's
Yep.
not taking on their stuff in an unhealthy way. Of
Yep.
course, walking alongside them and holding their struggles and things, but not
Mhm.
to a unhealthy degree for myself, because at the end of the day, like, I'm not making decisions for them anymore. I'm not,
Right.
so that I think that's really been the
Mm.
biggest.
Yeah. Well, and I have found parenting, because I'm probably biased because I am a two, but I think parenting as a two is incredibly, it's wonderful on one hand, but also it is so hard because
Right.
we're basically raising these human beings to not need us anymore, right? We
Right.
want them to go out
That's the
into the world
goal.
and do their thing and live their lives and all the things, but we're basically raising them, which it's like counterintuitive to why we're motivated. And I'm like, how do I navigate parenthood as a two? It's
Right.
so hard. And so
Right.
listening to you, my son is 18. He'll be graduating from high school in May, and I'm thinking, oh yes, okay, this is I'm right in the thick of that conundrum
Right.
of how do I
Right.
let him do his thing and live his life, and yet, and we're always parents, right? We never, that journey
Exactly. It
doesn't
never ends.
end, right? No matter how old they get, but
They
it
don't tell you
shifts.
that in the hospital either. Like,
No,
it doesn't ever get easier.
totally doesn't ever. And I asked my mom, I
It just
remember when my
changes.
son was little, and I asked her once, he was very little. He was like maybe 2 or 3. I asked her, "When do you stop worrying?" And she's like, "You don't. You don't." I'm like,
Right?
"What? I thought there was like an expiration date here. Like, what the heck?"
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, as a parent, I completely identify with everything that you're saying, because right, but it's about, like you said, doing your own work on yourself
Right.
and figuring out, like, "Okay, what do I need to do for me so that this is not, that this goes well, that this is not a
Right.
huge issue, challenge." And our kids want
Right.
that autonomy and independence. They don't want us
Exactly.
carrying, around and all of that thing. Not that they
Right.
don't still need us and want us in their lives, but they
Exactly.
need us there every step of the way. And twos, I
Right.
think we need to be in all the business, and we don't need
Right.
to.
Exactly. They need to learn how to find their own way. So
Yep. And we
we
need to let them do that.
we
So
need to let
yeah.
them do it.
Yeah. I'll message you when my son graduates and
Right. I know, I was gonna say, after this is over, we'll have it
we
we'll
need
have a
like a
counseling
little
session.
support group.
You will survive.
Yeah. I will make it. I
But I've
promise. I
actually
will.
heard, someone say recently, and I think this is such a good way to think about it, we're not she was saying, her youngest child went off to college, and she's like, "So technically we're empty nesters," but she said, "I think of myself as a bird launcher."
I love that.
And I'm like, "I love that," because, like, because the goal, at least for me, is
Yeah.
not that they leave the nest and never return, but
Mm.
that they come back.
Right.
And that, they come and go as they need and as they please. And I've been
Mm.
so thankful that that is what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
But, it's not they left the nest and they're never
Right.
coming.
They're never coming back.
Right.
That would
Right.
be a horrible thought. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, we don't want that.
Exactly.
I like bird
No, we
launcher.
don't.
I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna steal that terminology. I think that's great.
Yes.
I like that. Much better.
You're going to launch him.
Yes. Launching, launching, launching. I love it. So, as I mentioned, we, as twos, whether we want to admit it or not, we do sometimes tend to insert ourselves into situations. It could be family, it could be work, it could be other
Mhm.
situations where our help, as much as we think it's wonderful, may not be warranted or needed. Have you seen this show up for yourself? Have you actually recognize times or instances where you're like, "Yeah, I should have stayed out of that," or maybe you
Oh,
caught yourself and said, "I'm not gonna insert myself even though I
right.
know what to do better than everybody else because
What?
it's what we
Oh,
parents
I mean,
do."
I can't
So
relate at all. Of course I can. Um, and that again, that's something that's come, I don't know, with wisdom as I age, or but I really do. I realize how, earlier on in life, I would say, especially as a young wife, a young mom, like I probably bulldozed a lot more
mhm.
than I even realize.
Yeah,
And just
right.
inserting myself in places that I should not have, was probably not welcome, and that type of thing.
Mhm.
And so I do catch myself more often than I'd care to admit, and probably miss other times that I should still catch myself. But yeah, it's definitely something that I've grown in, and tried to, sit back, and because
Yeah,
I'm a doer, and
right,
I want to help and do things, and you know all that type of stuff. But if someone's not wanting that, I
right.
need to be respectful of that.
Yep,
So
for sure,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
and
unless they
it can be
actually
hard.
ask me, "Hey, can you weigh in on this situation?" or "I'd like your advice." And then I'm all like, "Oh, oh, okay,
Oh,
yay."
yay!
Yeah, but
Yay!
I've done this, I've been trying to do the same, and it's counterintuitive to, I think, what our nature is, but
Right,
I've found that it has helped in certain
right,
relationships for me to just be there, to let the person know I'm here, but I'm not
right.
gonna force my way into this decision you
Exactly,
need to make unless you ask me for help.
exactly.
And
And
then,
then I'm more than happy
I'm
to help.
so happy. I feel
Right,
so good. It's so nice. I just,
right,
yeah, it like
right.
makes my day. But
Yeah,
yeah, and that's hard. And that's a
yeah.
struggle. I think is something. And but to your point, I think just being aware, that that's a
Mhm,
thing, and where to kind of step back and, like you said,
mhm.
give that person that respect that they deserve to navigate, and then
Right,
you know
exactly.
that's
But
so.
man, if you ask, I've got lots to tell you.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah,
You don't
but
know what
really,
you're doing when
that's
you ask me to
I've
help.
already talked to my son, he and his wife are not local. So I'm like, when the baby comes, I want to be here and help as much as you want.
Mm,
No, my heart is like, I'm gonna wanna move in with you.
right.
But that's not reality.
No.
And, but it's like, let me know, like
Mhm.
I'm putting the ball in your court because I don't want to insert myself,
Yep. No. No.
but I mean, I do, but
Yes.
I don't want to,
Right.
so
Exactly. I don't
I'm
know if you've
like,
ever
hey,
watched the show Everybody Loves Raymond, but his mother, Marie, they live
she
across the
was
street.
something.
And my son actually calls me Marie. He calls me Marie
Oh,
because
that's
he's like,
funny.
"You're not gonna live across the street from me when I grow older, are you?" I'm like, "No, I might." We went to a college visit for him. He's going to our local community college here in the fall, and we went to, like, a campus visit day last week, and I was so excited. Just I love to learn, and I just love, being on a college campus was kind of fun. It was
Right.
reminiscent of, back in the olden days when I and I said to him, "Oh," I said, "I this would be so fun just to come and audit a class." And I said, "I could come out here too." And he looked at me like, "Woman, you need to just stop right now." He said,
Right.
"No." He said, "You are not coming to college." I said,
He
"I'm not."
said, Marie,
Yeah.
stay home.
Right, exactly. He looked at I they could just tell the look on his face. He's like, "You have
Right.
overstepped. You are not
Right.
coming out." I said, "I'm not gonna come out here, but wouldn't that be
Right.
fun if we were
But
both
right,
going to
exactly.
college together?" And he's like, "No, it actually would not. So don't you dare." And I'm like, "Well,
That's so
okay. That's
funny.
all right."
Okay. Okay, when you're done,
Yeah,
maybe I'll think about it.
right.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
that's what'll happen, exactly. So, I also wanted to touch on, stress and growth paths because, again, I think
Mhm,
those are really helpful tools within the Enneagram structure to understand ourselves.
mhm,
I really feel like me knowing where I go when I'm unaligned or stressed or overwhelmed has helped me
mhm,
so much recognize that one that I am a 2, that kinda really locked it in for me,
mhm.
but it's that rumble strip, right? It kinda warns you like, "Hey, you're heading down a path you may not wanna you're
Right,
veering off track." And then in
right.
growth, I've seen because you shared you've been doing work on yourself, I've been working on myself as well. I see where I have made progress, and I am in a
Mhm,
healthier place in certain situations. And so knowing where I go in growth or alignment in the Enneagram has really been helpful too. So
right.
in stress or overwhelm or unalignment, twos go to the unhealthy traits of a type 8. And so I'm just going to read a few of those, and I want you to tell me if any of these ring true for you. So, we become irritable and defensive if we feel our love and support have been ignored or rejected. We can have controlling, aggressive, demanding, and dominating reactions toward others. We can become confrontational and angry. We can threaten to withdraw our support and care. We might manipulate others into doing what they want. And we might blame our problems on others, seeing issues as one sided rather than owning any responsibility. Do you see any of those when you're just not maybe showing up as your best self? Do you see any of those playing
Oh,
out?
I want to say no, but of course.
We don't
I
do
want to say, "What are you
any of
talking
that.
about?" Yes,
Yeah,
yes, of
yeah.
course. Yeah, I definitely, and again, when, my kids were younger and I was working full time and I was probably more exhausted and overwhelmed than I realized, definitely like the domineering and I think I can relate to the anger, but I have I'm really even in great stress, not very confrontational. So that
Right.
part I didn't necessarily relate to. But yeah,
Right. Yeah.
definitely the kind of overbearing apps. I know that that is something that I have, yeah,
Yeah.
struggled with.
Yeah, it's easy, I think, for us to, I think, especially when we feel like we're helping and doing more for other or for someone than they're doing for us. And it's easy to
Yes.
get very upset about that. And I'm like you,
Right.
I wouldn't say anything. I don't necessarily relate to the
Right.
confrontational part of it. I would hold it in
Right.
and I'd be like a simmering pot.
Yes. And
And
then you get
then
resentful
right,
and
bitter
mhm.
and why aren't they doing
Yep.
as much as me and I'm doing all of these
Right.
things and they're not,
Yes.
and then and my husband would agree with this because we've talked about it because he's an 8, so we talk about the things, and
Right.
I simmer and I don't confront, like you said, you
Right.
kind of tend to not, but then there is a point after a while, it takes a while, sometimes I will kind of that lid comes off that
Uh,
pot,
I was just gonna
and
say the
I
lid
just
comes off.
lose it.
Look out.
Yeah. So it doesn't happen very often because I'm not addressing how I'm feeling in the moment like I
Right,
should be. And
right.
I've really worked on that. I've really worked
Mhm.
on that. But I think we tend not to want to make anybody unhappy or upset anyone.
Right, because
Um,
relationships and being
right.
connected to people is like
That's our
it's
lifeblood.
our
That's our
core.
key. Yeah. And
Right,
so if we
right.
don't want to in any way potentially jeopardize that. So we don't tend,
Exactly. Yep.
to do that.
Mhm.
On the other side of the coin, though, in growth or alignment, when we're really showing up as our best selves, we move towards the healthy traits of a type 4. And this was also something really interesting to me because I was like, wow, yeah, okay, I see this. So tell me if you resonate with any of these. We become aware of our tendency to believe that we always have pure and unselfish motives. We see our true heart, including unhealthy motives, and ask for forgiveness. We take care of our own needs. That's a big one. We discover our own emotions. We accept painful feelings, including anger, sadness, and loneliness. And we believe that we're wanted and loved just as we are, apart from what we do for other people. Do any of those sound like something you've experienced when you're doing well? And
Yeah, I think that's where I'm trying to live.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Hey,
where I'm
same,
trying to be these
same.
days. And I feel like a lot of what you said is feeling like more my bent now than
Yeah,
the other way, but,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely still a struggle, but I'm thankful that I feel like I actually feel like I can relate more to that than, what you read about the 8,
The 8,
so,
yeah,
I'm like,
that's
"Oh,
awesome.
yay."
Yeah.
Growth is always possible, so
Mhm.
I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah,
yeah,
definitely can relate to a lot of that.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
I
so
would agree, and I feel like, and again, like you said, it's possible, and it can happen, and it does take diligent work and faithfulness to,
right, right.
leaning into, support, leaning into faith, leaning into all of those things that we have to support us and help us. The one I always really look at in this is discovering my own emotions. Like when I am upset, sometimes I can't even name what I'm feeling. My husband will say, "Well, what is it? What's wrong?" I can't say what it
Mhm.
is. And part of it is I don't want to burden someone with that. So like him, because he's, usually it's the people closest to us that catch us
Right,
not showing
right,
up as our best. And
right.
he'll say, "Well, what is it? What is it?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And so
Mhm.
I've
Yes.
lately, I feel like I've been better able to name, I feel angry because of whatever it
Mm,
was, or I feel
that's
sad.
wonderful.
And it's again, saying it out loud, even just is like, oh, that's hard for me because I don't want to burden that person that I'm talking
Mm,
to with my own feelings. But in growth, we're better able to do that in a really healthy way to let people know in our lives, because we do tend to suppress our own needs a lot because we're always looking out at other people. We're always, what do they need? What can I do for everybody else? I think a lot of people, I think, can identify with that, but I think twos do it the most. We have it
Right.
the worst
Yeah.
in terms of that behavior, because we're motivated by wanting to serve others and help other people.
Exactly.
And
Absolutely.
our own stuff kind of falls down to the bottom
Right. Right. Yeah.
of the
And then
list.
when you try and focus on yourself, you're like, but like, is this the right thing to do? Because I should be doing this for this person, or, like, I know for me, as a person of faith, it's like, oh yeah, I should be praying for myself too,
Right.
shouldn't I? Like, I'm putting
Mhm.
my time and my energy into, praying for my people and my friends and, my family
Right.
and all that. And it's like, oh yeah, I can pray for myself too. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
We
Hmm.
absolutely are
Yeah,
worthy of love and prayer, and we for ourselves need to do those things and have that
exactly.
self-love and that focus on our needs. And again, and sometimes I find myself very able to do that. Other times I don't, and I ask for help. I do pray for that because it's just a constant undercurrent of a challenge that I think as twos is kind of just always under the surface sometimes, and
Right.
we're better about it than other times, and
Hmm.
it's just, but just that awareness. And again, I think that's one of the
Right.
beautiful things about the Enneagram is that it just brings such an awareness to who we are, who others are in our life, and
Right.
it just helps us so much with all of
It
that.
really does. Yeah.
It's amazing. Well,
It
this
really
has been
does.
so fun. I've had such a great time. Again, I think we could probably keep going because as twos, there's just so many things that
That
we
we
deal with.
connect on.
Yes, we do. And when you talk to another person that is the same Enneagram type, I think there's just this instant, I don't know, it's like this instant bond, this instant connection because there's just so much that you can relate to about each
Right,
other.
right. You
And
say, "You too?"
yeah. And and it makes you
I
not
so
feel so alone.
exactly, I so often, and it's funny, I've been saying this occasionally in, to other people, like, we only know what we know. Like, we know our thoughts. And, I look back at, things like as a child, like, oh, well, I just thought because, that's what my life was like. That's what everybody's life was like. And then, you grow up and you meet people with very different backgrounds and you're like, oh, like, that's just like, that's what kids, you only know what you know. And so I've been saying a lot is like, well, like, that's what I thought. So I thought everybody dealt with, whatever the thing is, like,
Uh-huh.
I thought everybody experienced that, and
Yep.
or whatever. And so it's been really,
Mhm.
for me, like, learning what other people are thinking, and the
Right.
Enneagram's been so important in that of, of course, like, for me, I want to connect with people. Like, that's how I'm wired. But
Mhm.
just because somebody else isn't like that, that just means they're different.
Right.
They're not
Better or worse or
better or
wrong or
worse
right.
or
Yep.
whatever, but,
Mhm.
like, that's how they were made.
Yeah.
And, so that's been so helpful for me. And then, wanting to learn about, like, what's their experience? What are their thoughts like? Why
That's
are
huge.
they going through life the way they are?
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so it's
Absolutely.
it's just been a really cool experience to learn more about this. So I love that you're doing this series and sharing what you know and helping giving people the opportunity to
Yeah.
teach others about their experience in life as a different Enneagram type.
Yeah, I love it. It has been so much fun recording these episodes, and I'm just excited for people to hear them and to learn about themselves and others. And yeah, the Enneagram is just it's a great tool for all of
It
us
really is.
to use,
It really
and
is.
it's amazing. So, Melissa, I just want
Yeah.
to thank you for being on the podcast. This has been so much fun. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like me to discuss on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com or direct message me on Instagram at Nicole Stute. Thank you for listening.